All right, so we're going to get to some of the high level, like where Cartel stands right now. Obviously, they were just designated like terrorist organizations. You're going to have some thoughts there, but I want to get through like to show people how deeply ingrained you were in this world. So you start doing these drops for this guy that were all random things. Could be at banks, could be meeting a random person in some other country, could, whatever. You start developing relationships, though, on the other end. Sometimes these were just regular people in suits. I would imagine other times you're like, oh, this is a serious player in the cartel itself.
Right. Yeah.
What does that look like? Like, what was your goal? Like, are you like, I want to meet a person at this level in the cartel and then become friends with them? Or was it more kind of same thing, like, let's see what we fall into, where the chips fall?
So the level that I was trying to be at was more of the layering level. So not that would be the integration level, trying to put cash into the banking system. I wanted to be more at the level where I'm distancing it from the original account through corporations all over the world or through trade deals or whatever, so that the money could be usable, right? Because I can't really influence the things that my organization was interested in, right? Like that we talked about in the beginning while I'm muling this cash around. And so I needed to move more into the layering jobs of it, which, luckily I was able to do fairly quickly.
You're also trying to get into the scenario, once again, where you're within these organizations like the cartels so that you then have access to have to go to other places.
Right.
So I'm just trying, because this is such a hard world for me to picture not being in it. But like, are they giving you, they're like, all right, we're going to need you, I'm going to paint a hypothetical here. We're going to need you to uncover some secret arms deals happening in fucking Serbia. So we need to figure out how to get you to Serbia. Meaning, we've identified this group of people within the cartels that deals in that area. And by the way, you're currently dropping off money to this group of people who knows those guys. So you're going to get through this guy to that guy.
That's actually pretty close. So if you think of the money laundering world, it's all jurisdictionally dynamic, right? Like offshore banking.
Yeah.
Right? You have places that are good jurisdictions for trusts. You have places that are good jurisdictions for the banking, right? So like, let's say Nevis and Belize, which are, close. You want to do a trust in Nevis, you want to do the bank account in Belize, just because of their laws. But there are places like this, Channel Islands, Luxembourg, all over the world, Hong Kong, right?
Yeah.
So you're trying to steer it in that direction by saying, well, there's a reason that I want to use Luxembourg, because I've got a hook up there. Like, you don't get asked a lot of questions like that, especially when it's a technical job. So what I mean is, if I'm having this discussion with, say, somebody in the cartel and they are not a finance person, I'm going to so overload them with like finance and tech jargon that they just don't want to listen to me anymore. They don't want to ask questions. They're just bored.
Cállate,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're trying to prey on that to keep them from looking, what's happening.
Kind of like, it's a similar psychology to like the charlatan angle.
Mm-hmm.
Hit them with a lot of terms, bore them to tears, or make them believe that you know what the fuck you're talking about, and just be like, I don't want to deal with it anymore.
Yep.
All right, so how long before you actually got somewhere where you're like, well, now I got the access I need?
So maybe like the year with him.
Mm-hmm.
Another 6 months after that, it was pretty close. So a year and a half.
What happened?
Just because of the connections that he had provided in places where, you're almost taking these people and leapfrogging over them a little bit. Like you're friends with this person and you get really close and they introduce you to somebody that's more helpful, and then this starts to go down and the new one, and you're just jumping ahead pretty quickly through these relationships. And as long as you circle back around to each person and say, like, I'm taking care of you, I'm still thinking about you, I'm just traveling a lot.
What a slut.
Yeah.
Send them a postcard.
Yeah. Yeah. You're the only one for me. I wish I was with you. Yeah.
And was there, I know you can't like say exactly who or necessarily the exact place or everything, but was there a guy you got to where you're like, bingo,
yes.
We're there?
Yes.
What did that look like?
This was an extremely high-level person in a very well-known international bank.
And what was the
one of the
context of you getting
top
to him?
10 employees at the bank in the world.
And he was on the take knowingly.
He eventually became on the take, yes.
Oh, he wasn't when you got to him?
No.
Were you the guy that convinced him to go on the take?
Yes.
All right. How'd you get to this guy?
So it was actually a parallel operation that I'll try to say as little about this as possible. He came up.
It's just you and me. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So he came up as a person of interest to the U.S. intelligence community at one point to be developed for something
Brian, go. Use the other one.
completely different than this. And that didn't work out, but we knew of this individual. And so this person got promoted fairly quickly in their bank. And so we decided to take a run at them as like a secondary, like, well, we couldn't use him for what we wanted, but maybe Matthew can use him for the money stuff. And he was amenable to it and eventually started doing what he didn't think he was working for the U.S. government. He thought that he was enabling money laundering.
All right, take me there. I want to know, like, first of all, so that I understand, when they're making the whole thing about him where they're like, we think that's a targetable guy, you have not made contact with him yet, have you?
Correct.
Okay.
No.
So now they're like, well, Matthew's in a place where he actually can make contact with the guy because of other people he knows.
Mm-hmm.
So without revealing the bank or the place or the guy or the exact job he had, we just know he was high up. That's important enough. How did you make contact with him? You just like walk into his office and be like, hey, what's up, bro?
So his bank had already been being used by some of the people I knew in the money laundering world, the criminal side of it at this point. And so the branch specifically, we didn't know if he knew that it was working that way, but I already had a reason to go there. And so we just started focusing on that branch and that location more and more and more. And so eventually it goes to creating that, what I called that bump or that perceived serendipitous encounter. And I walked up to him in a hotel lobby bar and struck up a conversation and then eventually made a friendship.
And one of the things that pisses me off in the movies about these types of conversations is that they're limited by time. So they have to, the scene's going to be 3 minutes.
Right.
From walking into the bar to suddenly getting the ask and getting it done, and suddenly, boom, and then it cuts to a new scene. But I always think to myself, I'm like, those motherfuckers had to be in the bar for another 3 hours. What did they talk about? And how'd they get there that fast? Mm-hmm. You're obviously not moving that fast. So I just want you to kind of show us how you would do this. Like, you walk into that bar, is it 5 o'clock, like happy hour type deal?
This was in the evening, maybe around 7. Yeah.
All right.
Maybe.
You don't have a goal of like, well, I want to get them by 8 o'clock. But how does the conversation start, and what types of psychological tactics are you using to get him towards that area where you might be able to push him over the edge?
Sure. Step one is I hope that he starts the conversation with me, not the other way around. And so I'm going to do things that essentially force that to happen.
Like
this
what?
gives him the illusion of free choice. So let's say I knew his favorite book, hypothetically from this research or something like that. And it was something that almost nobody ever reads, right? Just super unique to him. I might walk in like having just started it, something like that.
Whoa.
And then he's going to ask, and I can say like, well, I don't know much, about it. I just started it. Is it good? Like, you explain it to me, right? And I was just talking about something he loves to talk about at that point. And so that's one thing that can be done. The next is what we call a venue change, right? So people feel that they are more connected with somebody if they've been in multiple locations with them. So if we went out and we spent 6 hours at one bar just talking to each other, I would rather spend 2 hours, 2 hours, and 2 hours at 3 different bars, because your brain will make it seem like we've known each other longer and that we're closer.
That's true.
So things like that. All
right. So how did you, hypothetically, if you used his favorite book here, how'd you steer the conversation? Did it then naturally kind of get to, so what do you do? Kind of thing, and then that's where...
Yeah, the what do you do for a living, comes up pretty quickly in almost any conversation like this. And so you don't want to leak, even the cover of, right? Like I'm a money launderer. Oh, he'd probably guess, what was happening at that point. And so the approach that I usually tried to take was being bad at whatever my supposed cover I was telling him was, right? So if I want him to come to the conclusion I'm a money launderer eventually, and I'm going to say like, no, I'm a regular businessman. I do this, but I'm going to keep dropping stuff because he's in banking to where he's like, you know what? I think Matthew might be up to some shady shit. And he's just not telling me yet because we're not that close yet, right? So now it's that role reversal of he's trying to get it out of me. I eventually accidentally, leak this stuff, and then he feels validated. He was right. He knew it all along. And
do you plan that kind of thing ahead of time, though, exactly what those loose droppings are going to look like?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you it's kind of without knowing what he's going to say, because it's a live conversation, it's rehearsed like how you'll do it.
Yeah. So it would almost just be like talking points of at some point in the conversation, when I feel it's right, I want to get these 3 things out. And maybe the conversation has a different direction. I'm like, I'm not going to drop any of this. This is not the night. This isn't, we'll just do it another time. Maybe I'm getting all green lights and I'm, let's just get them out there. But that is amazingly dependent on the feedback that you're getting from the person that you're working.
Now, are you like kind of lightly drinking this time and trying to get him to drink more?
I'm going with it.
You're going with it.
Yeah, and sometimes even dragging him into like a faster pace, right? Because people will try to keep up with you.
Yes.
So if I'm not getting him, if he's not going enough, I'm going to try to rush him with it.
And you trust yourself drunk?
Yeah.
Pretty good drunk.
It takes me quite a while. I have a physical lag to it compared to most people, but I'm also somebody who's experienced in trying to do these things while consuming alcohol at the same time. They used to do, like in the Cold War, they did these weird tricks like eating butter or something, cut the line in your stomach. Like that's all.
I was going to ask, like, the CIA have like a secret pill you can take before that suddenly like combats alcohol as it goes into your system?
I wish. No, but one thing to always remember about this is in this situation, I'm the magician, right? And so I know what to pay attention for. And this person just thinks this is just something that happened to me on a Wednesday. So they are already at a significant cognitive disadvantage in this exchange.
Did you change venues on them?
Yes.
How long into the conversation did that happen?
It was actually really, really quick the first night because the opening was there. It was too crowded and loud to speak to. And so I just kept acting like I couldn't hear what he was saying when he was trying to tell me about something that he was very passionate about.
You said, let's get out of here?
No, he asked. He said, hey, we can
like,
go
buy me
the
dinner
street.
first. Relax, pause.
So we went up to his room,
Oh, you did go up to his room?
No.
How
the gangbang
romantic.
wasn't until way later.
I was going to say, man. It's getting aggressive.
So he changed.
Would you suck a dick for the U.S. government?
Absolutely not. No.
I don't believe you. Continue.
I'll never do that again.
That was good.
You don't get paid. I didn't get paid enough for that.
Pause. Anyway, yeah.
So he suggested a venue change, and it was only 2 in the evening, but it went very well.
And that was like a quieter bar or something?
It was just a quieter place, yeah.
And were you able to get, I forget if you said this at the beginning, were you able to get to the initial kind of ask or proposal on this first one?
No, not even close.
So, all right, so you had to lay the foundation. So how do you leave it with them? Like, oh, give me a call tomorrow. I really enjoyed myself. Thank you.
Yeah, you always, Shawnee knows all about this. You're always trying to set the stage for the next meeting. Right? You always want to set that up.
It's like dating.
That's what I'm saying, though. You
whole
have
thing.
an advantage here.
No.
Be like, I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
No, the whole human intelligence recruitment cycle, it's like dating. The whole thing, spot, assess, develop, recruit, handle, terminate. Each step is a different step in making a relationship with someone.
Yeah.
So you're always trying to you like them, they're checking the boxes. Just like you're swiping on an app, you're spotting someone. He spotted who he wanted. He's moving it to assessment. He's assessing, does he have the suitability and the access. Is he willing? Is he vulnerable? He's checking those boxes. Then he wants to move it to the monogamous relationship, right?
Yeah.
And then he's going to move it into, so that's development. Then he's going to move it into recruitment, which is like popping the question.
Or into where all my relationships had having to pay the other person
That's
eventually.
Right. That's right. How do you leave it with him after that first night? And like, how do you get the second date?
Yeah, so it really is dependent on the person and what happens. But, coming up with commonalities, which I already had, I knew what the hobbies of this person were. And so I suggested at the end of the first night an event that I knew was already like a hobby of his. Said I would be in town a little bit longer because he had paid for the bill in this specific interaction. And so I said, would you let me return you the favor? If you're free, you could come to this event with me. And
Where'd you take him golfing?
no, not golfing.
Golfing.
I would have embarrassed the heck out of myself if it was golfing. So
That's okay though, because then they feel bad for you. That's a good way to pull them in. Like, I gotta play
He's
with
a
this guy.
natural.
I
I gotta
know.
play with this guy again. Poor thing.
It's like you hang out with spies.
Fucking suck. Yeah, you people won't get away from me. It's not helping me. I'll tell you that. It does make me like, I don't have to think like you do because my life's not that serious, but I do like think about how you guys have to think sometimes. I'm like, damn, I'm glad I'm not that. Because that would like I would be very, very hardwired to be very paranoid. Like if I were in your seat, something like that, I don't know what I would do.
I think for me, seeing
Xanax actually. But
Xanax milkshake.
yeah.
let's keep the bars flowing. To me, seeing how easily people can be manipulated, was a little unnerving.
Yeah.
And now I take that with me just for the stuff that like we were talking about is I'm constantly checking my interactions with other people for indicators that they are attempting to manipulate me.
Right.
So it can be a little overwhelming when you're actually just trying to, be bros with somebody that's not trying to hurt you. But
Did you know after that first one that you had him? You didn't have him yet, but you knew you were going to get him?
I knew he was the type that we could get there most likely.
What made him the type?
He was very able to be influenced, and he was very quick to express being disgruntled against people that he should have had more loyalty to than me, having met me in one night. So, if I can get somebody on the first time I'm talking to him to talk shit about their best friend of 10 years, I can manipulate that person.
Okay. You said it took a while longer, though, to develop it, right? So it wasn't like at the next event. You're just making friends with the guy for a while. How long did it take before it started to get to the...
I don't know exactly, but months.
Months.
Yeah. Sometimes, this one was quick. These things can take years and years and years. So this one was very quick, but it was a matter of months.
And what was the moment like where you're like, boom, let's go?
I'm going to have to be careful about how I answer that because I don't want this to be a recognized thing. But so there's two stages to it. Once, when I knew that the person would compromise their work, security requirements for anything, for any amount of money, for any amount of reciprocity, it's going to happen eventually at that point. Like at that point, even though it was very small, I knew when the big ass came, it would be a yes. So that was the more significant part. And, chime in here, for me, the meeting where you do the big pitch, you want to almost be at a foregone conclusion. Like
100%.
This how this is going to go ahead of time.
You have to be. Because you're dropping cover, you have to be. If you're going to propose marriage, the answer is yes. Otherwise, you're dumb.
When you say dropping cover, though, you're not dropping cover. I work for CIA. You're dropping cover of that. I'm not just this corporate guy. You kind of already knew that.
Yeah, I launder dirty money,
Right.
And you're a banker because in the way that she's describing it, maybe the security service comes after you, the counterintelligence service. He could have called the cops on me though.
That's right.
At this point, and said,
That's right.
"Oh, you got me wrong. That's not my bag," and that would have been very bad.
Oh, so you gave him a bag.
Full of money.
Small bills cash. Large bills cash. And what was without revealing it for the operational purposes of people figuring out, were you trying to make him, were you at this point confidently or with prior permission speaking on behalf of a given cartel operation where you are trying to get this guy to be your cover to be able to do illegal activities at this banking institution?
So it would never be exposed to him at that level, right? Like I would never use the C word, the cartel word with him. You know, people like to feel like they have this blanket of security because you've only indirectly said stuff. You hint at it. You never said something that they're like, oh my goodness, if the FBI was listening in, I would be going to prison right now. And so it's always hinting at it. But in this instance, similar to the one I told you about with the computers, I wanted him to facilitate a very small thing. And then once I pitched him essentially on helping out, he was like, oh, I can do so much more than that in my position. Let me help you.
Did he have a severe, like, personal life vulnerability?
Yes.
Financially?
Not financially. He was extremely wealthy, but he had some other very nasty habits as well.
Like blackmailable type stuff?
Absolutely, yeah.
Did you utilize that?
No, because I didn't need to threaten him into, you know, I'm going to go behind your back and expose this if you don't help. He thought that being around me was going to facilitate him being able to indulge in his nasty habits more.
My imagination's wild.
I don't want to get too specific because if you put all this together, it could be.
I could Google it.
Eventually, yeah. So.
So this is some years ago now, because this was early on in your time infiltrating the cartels. First 2-3 years.
Yeah, so I think we're up to, you know, late 2010s. Right
Okay.
Now. Yeah.
All right. So you get in with this guy. Is that now the moment where your buddies back at the cartels go, yo, this hombre is a bad motherfucker. He can stay. And they start to really pull you in.
Right. So it's not as much like pulling in as like be a made member of our organization. It's not like they wanted to patch me in or I'm going to, you know, burn a saint in my hand and become a member. Like they don't look at it like that. They look at it more of who we're going to do business with. Right. And so the modern cartels, they operate like, I always imagine Walmart with a paramilitary wing, you know, to it. They're very business minded. And so they didn't want me to become a Walmart employee. They wanted me to become an affiliate company because I was getting things done efficiently for them. I was able to bring down the percentages that I was charging, you know, because it was becoming more efficient. And so they give you more and more responsibility.
So they're not hiring an accounting department. They're bringing in Deloitte.
That's right.
To help you. All right, I got you.
These things are very compartmentalized.
See, it all comes back. I told you. We related it back. By the way, shout out to Brian today, filling in. Alessi's out of town for the week, so thank you for doing this, my man.
Of course.
All right, I didn't have your mic on. You say that again.
Of course.
All right, cool. But doing a great job, by the way. But anyway, so you get in with this guy. You are now brought in as a subsidiary, you know, partner, consultant, whatever, of the cartels. Who, what, without revealing exact cartel or exact people, what types of people do you start running with now? And do the outlines of your responsibilities or things you're asked to do start to increase / change?
It does change, and it changed in a way that was beneficial that we were hoping for. And that is the more responsibility you have with this, the less you hang out with like the cartel guys themselves. They want distance from this, right? And so I'm not like moving into this is just hypothetical to use something everybody knows, like hanging out with Swiss bankers and then like popping off to Guadalajara at the same time. I'm moving into a safer world where my access is better and trying to get away from that situation that, you know, is more negative. But
was there a point where you started to feel, how do I want to say this? Like now that you're there and you're trying to get that, you actually do have that distance built in. You now can essentially travel alone to a lot of places and have an excuse to do it, be it Switzerland or, I don't know, Hungary or something like that. So now, like, I guess the question is, before this point, had you not been able to do as much of the actual, like, CIA stuff because you were trying to now establish a big cover again?
You're exactly right.
All right.
Yeah.
So now you're able to do that.
Right. The more they're minding you, the more that they're trying to vet you and make sure that can handle responsibility on your own when you're going through that phase, it's very hard to break away. Right. Once I ended up in a point where I have no boss, no supervision, now we've got some flexibility to work with. And then all you need to do is make sure that you can answer the questions of what happened to you every single day when you were away, when you come back, which is where that memory embedding approach.
So you would do that kind of thing. You'd go to Paris with Shawnee or something to go to a restaurant and be like, okay, we're here in La Boucher. All right, great.
Yep.
Got it. Picture on the wall.
Yep. Noting things. The tablecloth is this color. They were serving, this dish, and you're paying attention to those things so that you can recall it later.
Now, you had said last time that over the course of your, 15, give or take years doing this kind of thing, you didn't have a lot of access with your family. And your family even thought maybe you abandoned them because you couldn't tell them like what you were really doing. Mm-hmm. But I'm almost now surprised because it would seem like now you've got yourself in a position where you kind of could step out and do that back in your personal life. Did you stay away from doing that because you didn't want to get, creative vulnerability or something like that?
Yeah, definitely.
You thought you could be being watched all the time.
Yeah, there were two different sides to it. One, I think I said last time, it was easier for me to stay in my persona than it was to hop in and out and try to have that other side of it. It was easier for me. But also, you always think when you're leaving that bubble, that operational bubble, am I dragging something bad, with me? And when it comes to stuff like family and the people that I was dealing with, it's just better not to try.
But when you were in the biker gang, you were like a rock star and whatever, because it was more like you're constantly with the group, you're with the organization, you're at the strip clubs,
Whole different vibe.
Whole different vibe.
Yeah.
Now you're kind of like your own one cell man subsidiary in a way. Sometimes you go and meet with people, but the whole point is very similarly to intelligence. The job is having people not know who you are at all times. So you're not really you're not walking around with like the big dick you did in the previous career with the biker gang at all.
No, it transitions completely. I mean, there still is some of that because of the level of money, that I was dealing with. And so when you are living at that level, I was moving quite a bit of money at this time. And I wasn't, doing that and then staying at the Holiday Inn Express, when I was done. I was living the life of an extremely wealthy person at the time. And so you get a little of the rock star from wealth, obviously, but in a very different way. It's not the respect way, that was the same as before, where people are like afraid of you or want to be with you. It was more of just what came with the money at that point.
How would they pay you? Cash and then you got to launder it?
It depends. Now so much of it could be like the Bitcoin, which became huge.
And your bank account that you put that in that was under your name, it's like CIA owns that bank account essentially.
Sure. Anything that was like an operational use, something the U.S. government has.
So when it's done, you don't get to keep it.
No. I wish.
So they get extra taxpayer money.
I wouldn't have taken.
You got to stay.
I wouldn't have been taking the train up here if I had kept all the money from that.
Hey, listen, you changed my flight, so I did get him a flight in here.
Yeah.
That kind of sucks. They should kind of let you keep some of that. You got used to the lifestyle. It's like when you go to divorce a woman, she got used to the lifestyle. She gets 50%.
I love the way you think. I think we should reopen this can of worms with them.
Mad Dog, come on, buddy.
Yeah. I mean, there's stuff I got to take, from it. I had a 6-figure wardrobe. I got to.
All right, so you got to keep that.
Oh, yeah.
What are you wearing right now?
This is bespoke. Yeah.
Everything's custom on this one.
Okay. All right. So were you wearing this when you were making deals with the cartels?
Not this one, no.
Not that one?
No.
The bloodstained one outside.
Right.
That, by the way, I don't know what's in your bag. There has to be a body in there. That thing's fucking 100 pounds. I mean, they didn't let you on a flight with that.
Yeah.
Who'd you pay off?
I mean, we've been talking about this for a while. There are ways around these things.
What is in that?
It's just clothes.
You sure?
Yeah.
It's beauty products.
Clothes wrapped
beauty
up.
products.
Clothes wrapped up with bricks of cocaine, maybe?
Yeah, various accoutrements.
Okay. All right. So you live in this lifestyle, because again, it's different. You're kind of on your own island in a way. You still have the corporate cover, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So You go into an office, you going on the road for business, right? For actual legit stuff.
Right, which is now what the banker thinks my cover is.
Yeah.
So he thinks I'm hiding the cartel stuff, and everybody else think, and I'm hiding this over here. Very much like a magic trick.
You're
It's
so
like-
layered,
It's
too.
like dating a bunch of women at the same time. Like,
Yeah.
how do you keep your story straight?
It's amazing.
It's fucking exhausting, bro.
And you were saying you don't keep long-term relationships or anything. You're a hit it and quit it kind of guy,
You gotta be,
right?
right, these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These days.
I told you we were going to get an education today. But like, I don't know. I'm just trying to picture it. Like, do you live pretty much like they talk about with spying? It's not the exciting movies or anything. It's like you're boring, boom, boring,
That's it.
and so on. So is that your life in the sense that, you get up, you work out like everyone else, you fucking go to the office, you say hi to Candace at the front. All right, ask her if she got your coffee ready, start doing the actual real work, make some calls like you're important around the world, get the bills paid, go home, and then, make sure you make the call to the cartel to check in.
Absolutely.
That's your day.
Yeah, you're trying to be as normal as possible, even in ways that are purposely mundane at times, just to look as normal as you possibly can. And one of the things I was talking to Dr. Ken, the guy called the Spy Whisperer, about is in the knock world, one of the traits that you have to have is the ability to endure long periods of loneliness, or it will drive you completely crazy.
Did it bother you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're social creatures. I like being around people. Part of why I'm good at what I did is that I enjoy interacting with people. And so when those relationships have to go away, that you feel that for sure.
Forgetting your real relationships, though. Now moving to all the relationships you are making, being social, doing this at a corporate level and a legal level, and then even, with your back office people at CIA who you're talking to.
Yeah.
It's not real. The social interaction is fake. It's not, I would imagine even though you're in character, you're not getting the same true, I don't know, oxytocin release or whatever that we would normally get when you're making real relationships, like with your family or your actual friends, right?
I have to disagree with that. I got the same emotional response from doing this that I have with anybody else in my life.
So you really lived it.
You have to. It has to be real, or people can tell that you're faking it.
But you still go home to your own place at night, right?
No, my persona at this time, that is my place. There is no difference between my personal and this.
That's not what I mean. What I mean is you're going home alone. You're not married. You don't have kids or anything.
Right.
You're living this life where that's not on the table, right? Occasionally some girl at the downstairs bar is going to get lucky, but we all know that's not like fulfillment. I mean that seriously. It's not like fulfillment to you in a way.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
One of my one quote I've always been fascinated with is I heard it in Boardwalk Empire for the first time, but I think he was quoting someone, like someone else said it. The hardest thing for a man to do is sit alone in a room with nothing but his thoughts and be okay.
I could not agree more with that. And especially having since left it, that's something that I struggle with now. Like after leaving the work, like to just sit in a quiet room by myself is not my happy place. Like I'd rather like go out somewhere where I've got the energy of people around me and stuff. That has definitely carried with me after that job.
Is it because of all the shit essentially? Like how the world really works?
No, I think it's more just where my brain feels comfortable after having done it for so very long. Like my brain's natural resting happy place is not to just sit by myself anymore.
Right, constantly plotting, thinking.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
And now you
always-
don't
always
have
going.
that.
Right.
You have it at like a consulting level, but that's like going from NASCAR to fucking driving on the back road.
So it's actually the work, like doing the consulting work and stuff is when, I'm dealing with these topics again, is when like now my brain's back in the happy
Yeah,
place.
you feel something, but it's not the same.
It's not the same.
It's not life and death. You can't fake that feeling.
Right. Yeah. You're trading, heroin for a smoking habit. You
Right.
know, it's
That's a good way to put it.
it's not the same. It doesn't feel the same. And the brain is going to try to compensate, for that. And you got to fight that off, right? Or else it's going to subconsciously put you in situations that you don't need to be in. And I saw when I first got out that was a potential downfall for me is, searching out similar type rushes like a drug, and got to be cognizant of that and fight it off.
Were there potential temptations that came in that were totally illegal that you wanted to fill that void with? You don't have to say what they were, but if so.
No, not really. No.
Then is it what kinds of things, if you don't mind saying?
I think that getting to the point of having that level of interaction with people can be addictive. Also, being around danger became addictive for me as well. So you just feel like, it's boring. I can't really hype up to pay attention to it unless there's some element of that to it. It's almost like venturing into fetishes and stuff, like you're getting away from the vanilla side of it. And, you can't go from, partying at the Playboy Mansion to as vanilla as possible right after that. You're going to say, like, I don't like this anymore. I'm used to something else.
Yeah, you were saying last time you were giving examples of, like, you kind of feel a place like, oh, that place feels cool. And in the back of your mind, it's dangerous. You go into that bar and then shit's going down and you're like, fuck, here we go.
Yeah. 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 There was an instance this is maybe a month or two after I had gotten out. I think I told you this off camera. You told this story. Yeah. I don't know if I said it on camera.
Was that in the Patreon episode? You might have told that one in the Patreon episode. You listen to this one, Brian. Did he tell a story about being in a bar where there was a fight that broke out? I think that was in the Patreon episode, so you can tell that one now. Okay,
so the one I'm thinking of is I'm sitting at the bar. The door is behind me. I can't even see the door to come in. And there's somebody sitting here next to me who I'm talking to, and then there's the well. And I'm sitting there talking to this. It was a female, and all of a sudden, this older lady walks by, and she just interrupts our conversation, and she goes, "Wow, you are looking fucking fine tonight," to me in front of this girl, and this girl just buries her head in her hands, like just embarrassed. And
Mom.
Yeah, that was Mom. Yeah, right. And so we're sitting there talking, and she's all embarrassed. And all of a sudden, the guy standing in the well is looking at the front door, and his face just goes this look of fear on his face. Let's go. I'm like, what is going on? So I turn around, and over my shoulder, there's this guy standing there raising up the front of his tracksuit and pulling a Glock out of his pants. And they're screaming at each other like, you're not going to do me like that. And, here's
You're like, I'll take another. Yeah. I'm here for this.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, it's about to be the OK Corral between these two guys standing right over here. So the first thing I think is this guy, he's pulling it out of his waistband in this way. He's right-handed.
Not a good place for your gun.
Yeah, he's going to send around early, and it's going to shoot me in the ass because he's, like coming around this way. I don't want that. And so this girl's freaking out. I grab her. I put her behind me. I go up against the wall, and we're trying to do like the walk like an Egyptian pose to get out of the bar. And as soon as we get out, she's like, "Oh my gosh, my cousin's still in there. You can't leave her in there." I was like, "Who the fuck is your cousin?"
Yeah. Who are you?
And she's like, describes, her physically to me. And I go back in, and both of the guys look at me coming back in. And I gave like a quick, like, I don't know why. I just went like that for a second. And you should have seen the look on this dude's face. He's like, who the fuck is this guy? And luckily she was right in the door. I just grabbed her and, left. And it ended up that guy, one of the two guys, he got shot to death that night.
That same night
after I left. Yeah. So
you know how to pick them.
Right. Yeah. I think it's an energy thing, and it can pull you to it if you're not watching out for it. The brain, it's a crazy thing.
So that was subconscious rather than conscious.
That's my opinion of it. Yeah, is that I subconsciously put myself in a situation that I was more familiar with, but not necessarily should have been in.
How did you deal with the loneliness you were talking about while you were still in, like late at night, sitting alone in the room yourself? You're living this crazy life. Everyone you're lying to. You can't talk to your real family. You can't talk to your real friends. you're in the middle of something that you know is bigger than yourself, but it is your life ticking away right here in the years that you're building up doing this. How psychologically, how do you deal with that?
I just leaned into it more. If I was lonely, I spent more time with the people that I was supposed to be developing. Those relationships had a fulfilling angle to them as well. And so to me, if I was like, man, what should I be doing right now? I feel lonely. Well, go back to work.
Mm. Now, you told the story last time about the wildest situation, the worst situation you were in, which was, taken to some warehouse.
Yeah.
And there was, it's horrible, but
Yeah.
bunch of cartel guys around a little kid
Yeah.
taking a carrot peeler to his face for 10 minutes while his dad's sitting there watching because his dad had stolen money or something and they wanted to punish him. And
That was a money issue.
Yeah, you told the story last time about how you have to stand there and watch this. Like, where in the timeline was that? Was that shortly after you were now sucked in after turning the banker?
This was even earlier than that, towards like the
Earlier.
bulk cash smuggler timeline. That's because they're vetting. That was part of them vetting me, like seeing who I was and stuff like that. That's one of the reasons that leaving that as quickly as possible and going over to the, I'm your guy over in Switzerland doing the banking thing, like keep me the fuck away from all of that, was I was running away from that into how fast can I make that transition. But yeah, that was part of them trying to vet if I was the type of person that they could do business with.
When you're doing that, are you purposely therefore looking directly at it, making yourself watch it directly?
No, and they weren't like holding my head trying to make me. What I'm trying to do in that instance is respond like I'm normal, but not a problem for them, right? And so you got a million things going through your head at a time like that. But if you're focusing on doing the work, right, working your way through it, it's almost a way to not experience it as viscerally. You're focused on the job.
Are you, I don't know, like how, because you've been in character for years at this point when we're talking about that, so you're used to that, but that's such an extreme situation in all the worst ways.
Yeah.
How much are you this is a weird question, but how much are you purposely aware of your facial expressions when that's happening versus being on autopilot of like, all right, exactly what you just said. I don't want to act like I like it. I don't want to act like I'm overpaying attention, but I also don't want to act like I'm going to be a problem. Like what are the thoughts that are going through your head? Because I can imagine that's the longest 10 minutes of your life.
Yeah. So I'll steer it back to the method acting thing. I was so in the persona that I was that you trust it, right? So you trust the cover, you trust your persona, you trust what you've built. So it'd be like, a method actor that's been on a project for a very long time. If you would have taken them to a situation that didn't have to do with the movie and shown them something, their facial reaction might be completely different than a year before that, before they started the project. And so I'm just trusting that what I and a lot of smart people put time into building was going to look right, and just completely trust falling into that.
Sound about right?
My situations were totally different.
Yeah, I don't envy that. I think about that one a lot because like I could see you felt that big time.
Yeah.
But you have a job to do, which is just like crazy. But as you get these big responsibilities now and they're keeping you separate, you still you have some interaction. There's times you go and meet with these guys. Like, what types of people are you meeting with, and are you down in Mexico with them?
Sometimes, yeah, but usually it would be like meeting at a hotel to have almost like a business meeting would be in a hotel, or to go out to dinner at that point. And these are at this level much higher ranking individuals.
What kinds of things are you talking about? Just like specifically your job and stuff you're doing, or are they also sharing some secrets of the kingdom?
It's like if you went over to the steakhouse over here and overheard a conversation, it's probably exactly the same. Like the amount of normalcy that these people could muster was quite shocking to me. They're just people, like she mentioned earlier. They're people too. They also have these other very unique things about them that other people don't share. But if that's 10% of who they are, the other 90 is just like everybody else. They're talking about sports. They're talking about horse racing. They're talking about their spouses, their, all the normal stuff.
Did you ever deal with anyone who was a number one or number two?
No.
Approximately area, how high up did you get dealing?
Top 25.
Okay, that's pretty high. How big was the organization you worked with? Do you know?
I don't know how many members or people they're connected to they would have, but they're a global organization.
Yeah,
I'll put
tens
it that
of
way.
thousands probably.
Yeah.
That's wild.
But people that are actually in it at that level, and that's one thing that using money as an angle is very efficient for in the intelligence world, because people don't delegate the money to down the chain, right?
Right.
If they're the ones dealing with tens of millions of dollars, you're much more likely for them to interject themselves personally into it, just because that's how people are with money.
Yeah, they want to watch where's my fucking money?
That's
Who's
it.
handling it?
Yeah, so it forces that up, right? Money's easier to trace as well. So there's a lot of benefits to running an intelligence operation from the finance angle.
So there are a lot of people sitting at home right now thinking about the moral question here, and they're right to think about it. I think about it too, which is that here you are, someone working on behalf of the United States government using our tax dollars, purposely in an organization where you are not trying to take it down at all. In fact, you are helping them do their work at the highest level that you can, strictly under the guise of, well, for national security reasons, which is why you're doing it, because you want to get access to things to be able to help with what you view as more important. Okay, we got to sell some drugs, make some guys 100 millionaires versus like a nuclear bomb doesn't go off and take out, 10 million of our people. I can see where that deal is a trade-off, but looking back on it now, not while you're in it, you're doing your job then, but could you see why people at home have an issue with our organizations actively trying to help organizations like this to get their job done, and where people might think there's got to be a better way?
Yeah, sure. I can see where somebody would approach it from that angle. I think that's fair. The world that I worked in is often so much of a trade-off in that way, and it's impossible not to do business with bad people to get what we need done out there. It's not a bunch of good people out there that are doing these things. We're going to have to intersect with them. And if every single time something came up that was like, oh, that's illegal, we said we got to interject right now and cut this off and stop it, we would never get to a high enough level to do things. And so I understand that there are moral dilemmas in that profession. I think that's fair, and I think we should be held accountable to do things the best way that we can. But for me, it was always, there is a specific focus and a bigger picture here, and that's, I'm not I wasn't the decision maker, at the time, and so I just focused on the job.
I think it's how big the picture is, though. It's like, I don't want to treat this so callously, but just for the sake of example, all right, one person gets taken out innocently in the middle of something, all right, that's one casualty. But when you're talking about a situation where you're working with an organization that is actively working with a foreign adversary as well, that you may want to keep an eye on, by the way, to get intelligence on that, I can understand that. Yep. But you're working with an organization that has graduated over the years to sending worse and worse stuff in here. People blame the CIA all the time for the crack epidemic in California and like in the inner cities. It's hard to argue with that. And now you look at, like, I think about all these moms who are losing their kids to accidental fentanyl, not even the ones that we should also very much include in this who get addicted to fentanyl and stuff, but the ones who, went to go buy Coke because they're an idiot 17-year-old want to have a good time and had fentanyl in it. Yeah. And it's like, or weed. And then they're dead, and it's not one or two or three or four. I mean, I have friends who have died from this.
Yeah, I lost my brother to
exactly. You are someone who is literally in the middle of that. Like, how do you rectify that?
Well, so let me be clear. Just because I was not there to take down that organization does not mean that there were not tons of U.S. resources aimed at taking down that same organization. That just wasn't my job. But, now that they've been designated as terrorist groups, and it's not like where I used to work, their whole perspective on this cartel was what I was doing. That was just like tangential. Right. They were still actively trying to stop what you're talking about. I just wasn't at it from that angle.
So you think it can be, we can live in a world where there's a mix, like, okay, they're gonna do their thing, we're gonna do ours where we can, and let's just not overlap.
Well, I think like you're asking, what my headspace was then and at the time and now, and that's that this is a race car team, and my job was to change the tires. Somebody else was driving. It wasn't my job to do every single.
That's right.
And so that's what I focused on is I'm doing the task that I was given, and I know there are a lot of brave women and men that are smart people that are doing these other tasks that I'm watching. I hope get stopped as well. That they're on it, and that's a team, and somebody else has that ball.
One of the ones I always think about with this is the Kiki Camarena thing, which is now being talked about more because we just extradited Carol Quintero here,
Right.
who we know was involved.
Yeah.
And I want to put a pin in the cartel terrorist organization thing because we should all talk about that and what that could look like. But on Kiki Camarena, a lot of people out there know the story, but he was the DEA agent. He was murdered in 1986. He had been a very successful DEA agent in Mexico. Got in with the cartels, and eventually they kidnapped him. They tortured him for days. Then he was left dead. And there's a lot of controversy about, I don't know why I said it like that, a lot of controversy about whether or not CIA was involved, and specifically whether or not Felix Rodriguez, who that's one guy who's been floated out there, was the actual guy who killed him as an undercover in the situation within the cartel organization. And this is one I've struggled with a lot because I've always said, like, okay, let's say that's true. Let's say that's what it was. Let's say you're the CIA, because this is now your literal territory. It's the same kind of thing. And you have been doing some long-term 10-year mission for some crazy national security shit. And some DEA agent accidentally was really good at his job and got into the worst situation where it is you either keep your cover and allow this mission to continue, or this guy's a casualty of the situation. And I always wonder if that's what happened there. Do you think something like that is possible? If that could have been what happened?
I have no inside knowledge of the Kiki Camarena situation. I can tell you that during the time that I was there, if I would have been involved in something that we thought a U.S. federal agent's life was in danger, they would have pulled the plug right then and there.
That's reassuring to hear.
For sure.
You sound very confident saying that too. I like that.
Well, it was something that was gone over with me. Like, there are situations where we're yanking the ripcord here, and that definitely would fall, into that category.
Does that sound similar, like in your world, Shawnee?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of rules. Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Okay. Now, what about the cartel terrorist organization thing? Because, like, I hear this. Obviously, we all know what the term is, but what does this mean from, like, a diplomatic standpoint? Like, it's, in fairness, comparing it to, like, Afghanistan had a fake government that we set up, and, they were just on the take and whatever. Mexico they're definitely on the take, but they have this real full government, a way bigger GDP. They're literally our neighbors down there. What does it look like when we've declared these organizations, which I do think are terrorist organizations, but now we've actually officially done it? Like, how can we now act on this, and is there going to be a lot of ramifications from that?
I think the biggest tool it gives you is the authorities that fall under the counterterrorism laws for us to go after them. So that's the plus. I think where it gets challenging is their physical proximity to the United States, their proximity embedded inside the United States. So that means if they want to retaliate, I think that they have a significantly better chance of being able to pull that off than some of the terrorist groups in other parts of the world, just because of how embedded they are. But one of the dynamics I find the most interesting is that they're the only terrorist groups that almost all of their funding is essentially coming from our population, right? So we're the biggest narcotics consumer by far of any country in the world. And so if we're going to treat them like terrorist groups that could do things back here, we also have to contend with the fact that a lot of their money is coming from the people that we're trying to defend buying their product. And that's a dynamic that I don't think has existed, in my recent memory to that extent, that it's going to be extremely complicated work with.
How do you treat something like? How do you carry out counterterrorism missions though? In a sovereign nation that's on your border as well. Like if you're it reminds me of like in some ways the Obama red line comment on Syria, like, well, don't use those chemical weapons or we're coming in, and then he couldn't back it up. All right, we just named these guys terrorist groups. Are we actually, like, I know Trump is going to want to back it up, but how much ability is he going to be able to have to actually, from a counterterrorism standpoint, back that up?
Yeah, I can't, speak to that too much myself because I was, almost dealt with counterterrorism zero. But I do agree with you saying that there's a complexity that's going to get added to it.
What do you think, Shawnee?
This is outside of my expertise, but from the CT side, my studies and my work was more focused on Middle Eastern terrorist groups. I think the question is, how are you going to address it? Are you going to address it any differently than you did in the past? Because I don't know how successful we were truly with counterterrorism efforts, with a lot of these Middle Eastern groups.
Right. I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic that Matt brings up that, like, we're funding it, but they got us addicted to it too.
Yeah.
So it's not like this perfect, like, we're buying it because we all want to enjoy the product. We have a lot of people who have been addicted to the product, sometimes unknowingly because they spiked it and stuff. Right. A lot of times unknowingly. Right. So I don't know how much that factors into it. What I think more factors in is not to, delegitimize a lot of these countries, but like Iraq and Afghanistan were literal war zones. I would argue that parts of Mexico are literal war zones, but there are a lot of areas that aren't. And also, it's a little bit of like a controlled corruption. I don't want to understate this.
Right.
Like, I don't want to mask the problem. The cartels are a huge, huge problem. But, like, you're not going in somewhere where they don't have governors and, they're a form of senators and who are all bought off, by the way, and an actual president who's elected by their people, technically. Whereas it's not like Hamid Karzai's in there with a bag of cash.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. But even like what he was saying with it being so embedded within our nation, within our society, how do you do CT operations here in the United States also? Are we only going to do it in other countries? Are we targeting things here? Because we do have laws and rules about targeting people, targeting Americans. So how does that work? I don't know.
Yeah, I hadn't even considered it from that angle, but yeah, it's just amazingly complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how this plays out. We should probably talk about this more in the future as well, because obviously, like, it's early days right now. But what was also the thing that was really creepy to me, I don't know how much insight you could have on this, was the whole El Mayo thing when he got brought here. What, it's not like you were involved with that, but what did that look like to you?
And this has happened, several times when, El Chapo was coming, and there's a lot of and again, I wasn't directly involved in that, obviously, but and what was it? I think El Chapo's wife at one point got picked up at LAX.
I think so, yeah. She was thrown in prison for a time here.
Yeah. So I don't know what's all behind that, but I do think the way that that's going down is interesting. Yeah,
it seemed a little bit coordinated. And, like, he landed and they were all there ready to go. It's like, was he, he was obviously kidnapped to do it. And you do have El Chapo's sons who were here in prison and could have intelligence, but they were, like, warring with him too. So why would, I don't know. It was a little spooky. I did a YouTube live on it back then, and I'm still, like, very confused by it.
Yeah, it is confusing. And, some of it might come from the infighting, right? Because Sinaloa split. And, there's been instances where a top 3 member has been given up, by the other members to try to appease something, right? Specifically with when the ICE agent, was shot. So sometimes, and I'm not saying this is what happened, but sometimes these organizations try to police themselves a little bit or regain some kind of footing. It's funny to think of it that way, but to regain some footing if they think things are going badly for them. I know he recently, I think just in the past week, said that he would plead guilty if he got like life or something, right? Like if he
Mayo
avoided-
did?
Yeah.
Interessante.
Yeah. So I think that's the deal that's on the table because he's here in New York, right? And
I think so.
yeah. So I think that what they're going for now is he'll say he's guilty of, I think, 17 felony counts if, he doesn't get the worst possible outcome.
Yeah, that one's strange. That one's really strange. That just doesn't sit with me right. Because he's also, like, he was the ghost. He was the guy who just quietly, he wasn't like El Chapo, wasn't as loud. He quietly operated. He wasn't fucking meeting with Sean Penn, take a picture. And then suddenly, here he is. Same deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what's behind that, but I'm really interested to see how that plays out.
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.